So at some point, if you're trying to send user data to your database, or you're trying to make any event that has to do with webhook, you've probably struggled with the webhook URL setup. And using Negrok for development is really tedious because every time you restart, your URL changes. And when it's time to go to production, switching URLs is quite messy. So luckily for us, there's a service that lets us manage webhooks efficiently, and that service is called hookdeck. So just to be clear, this video is not any way sponsored by them, but I only talk about the services that I have tried. So basically, hookdeck is a service that lets you manage webhooks efficiently, and it works by creating a single consistent endpoint for your webhook regardless of whether you are in development or production. So what it does in a nutshell is that it routes those webhooks to your local server or your production environment. So if we scroll down, you can see there are different features of what it does. You can use it as an event gateway to receive webhooks, to send webhooks, to connect different services together. Um, you can also use them for asynchronous API. I've not tried this, and serverless queue. I have not tried this as well. So in order for you to have a better context of what this video is about, I would highly suggest you watch the previous video where we try to sync our Clark users from our dashboard to our Sanity CMS. And we are currently using this endpoint from ngrok. And like I said in the starting of this video, the downside about this is that if I want to deploy to production, I will have to switch this URL to my own endpoint. And if I want to work on it on dev mode, I will also have to switch this back to ngrok. So the first thing to do is to go back to hookdeck. Make sure you have an account. I have an account with them, and click on dashboard. And if it's your first time, all this should be blank, but just head over to connections. And as you can see, I have some connections that I'm currently using, and they are using a single URL. So what you have to do now is to click on connection, and basically you want to set up a new connection. So leave it as create new source, then we'll give it a name. So be descriptive as much as possible. So I will give this Clark or call this one Astro Clark auth. So next is to define our event destination. We will going to create a new one, but you can use an existing one as well. So the destination name is basically the name of the endpoint. So in our case, I can just call this development, or you can still add the name of the application as well. So I'll just leave this as development. Then the destination type, it's we're going to use the CLI because we'll be receiving events on our local host. Okay, you say this name is already used, so we can just say Astro Clark Dev. Then destination type is CLL, and this uses ngrok under the hood as well. So, but the good thing is that we don't have to do this setup of typing http ngrok and specify the port. It does that for us under the hood. So the next thing to do is to define the path. So our path is this part right here. So the next stuff right here is letting us know that we can define connection rules. So I've not really tried this transform, I've not seen the use case for it. But for this filter, you can basically filter what pass through or comes through this endpoint. So you can say when the user is created, this should be fired and stuff like that. Why for the name of the connection, you can just say sync users db. So once you are done with that, you just have to click on create. All right, our connection has been created. So what we need to do is we need to copy this endpoint right here in order for us to receive requests from this part that we've created, and we need to connect it to our local server by installing their CLI and running hookdeck login and this as well. So I will still copy this to my clipboard. Okay, I will leave this as it is and I'll close, and you can see the connection right here. So what you have to do next is to come to your Clark dashboard, click on edit, and I'll paste in the link, which is this one right here, and I'll click on save. So by doing this, I don't have to touch this endpoint ever again, except maybe I decide to delete this or change this to something else. But other than that, I don't have to come right here again. So the next thing to do is to go to our VS Code, and we are going to install their CLI. So to do that, you just have to type npm i -g to install it globally on your PC, and say hookdeck CLI. So I'm not going to install it because I already have it up and running. But just do this, and the next thing you're going to do is to say hookdeck login. So before we hit login, I just want to close this command prompt because we don't need it anymore. So click enter, and you can see that by default it authenticates us, and if it's your first time, it should take you to a new tab on your browser, and you're going to confirm your identity and close that tab and come back to the terminal right here. So once you're done with that, you then have to copy the other command, which is this one. So I'm just going to change the port right here to port 4321, and once you're done with that, so this backspace here, so hit enter, and it's going to bring this CLI just like what we did using ngrok. Like I said, it's using ngrok under the hood. So we just have to minimize this, and we can test it out by, I think our stuff is not up and running. Okay, we can say npm run dev, and we can go back, and so for our database as well, we'll still need to rerun this again. So say localhost 4321/admin, and make sure we don't have any users on our user document. So select user, and there's no user. So in order for us to test that, we have to sign in with Google, and I'll use this email. All right, well, we signed in, and we can check this. You see that I'll have a 200 post request, and you should also see that user right here. And let me digress a little. If I go back to my webhooks file, so I don't think I explained this on my last video. If you are not using Sanity and using a different database like a Neon database or a Zeta database or whatever, you just have to pass in these credentials to your database right here. and use whatever config file. So it's basically similar to this, but the syntax will be different depending on what database you're using. But from this point to this point, you should from this point rather to this point should be exactly the same. The only difference is the way you are passing this data to your own database. So that being said, can come to this hook deck, and in order for us to know that the connection was successful or the operation was successful, we can come to this inspect and select the CLI view and the request. Give this a minute to load, and you can see at 8:43, which is 8:45 right now, this request was made. So we can click on it and you see get more details about it. So these are the payload from Clark. All right, cool. So now, how do we use this for production? So what we are going to do is I'm going to go to netlify.com and I will deploy this application to Netlify and test it out as well. So while that is going on, I will have to close this, kill this terminal, cls, and say git init, and say git add git commit, say first commit, then I will log in and also open my GitHub, and I'll call this project Astro auth. So leave it at public, create repository, and here we'll add new sites and port from existing sites. Yeah, we'll use GitHub. So by the way, if you've not used Netlify to deploy any of your applications, I do have a video on 3 ways to deploy your applications to Netlify. So do check that out as well. So you can come here and copy this command, open this terminal back and paste command right here, hit enter. So I can clear this out and I can refresh this. All right, cool. Then I can search for that project. So I called it Astro Clark Art. Yeah, this is the one. So I'm using Netlify because on my astro.config, I'm using Netlify as my adapter. So if you're using Vercel, you should be deploying to Vercel. If you're using Node, you should look for a service like Render or something else. And if you're using Cloudflare, you should use Cloudflare pages, I guess. So I can go back and give this a site name. So say Astro Clark Auth is available. Then we need to add the environmental variables. So this is one of the downside about Netlify. You can't add multiples. You have to do them once. So I'll quickly populate them and get back to you shortly. So I've quickly populated everything. Then I can click on deploy. So let's give this a minute to deploy because it's currently building. All right, it has been published. So I can open this on a new tab and let me just bring this side by side right here. So this is the URL link. And one cool thing about Sundays is that we're still on development, but when we sign in from this actual endpoint, it's going to still work fine in development as well. So we don't necessarily have to deploy this to production first before it works. So we're going to sign in, but I want you to guess if this is going to work or not. I don't want to tell you that right now. So let's just test it out. So I'll sign in with a different Google account. All right, we're signed in right here. So let's check our database. You can see that the user still came through on our CMS right here. And if we check the CLI request, and I think there's a way to refresh this. Okay, yeah, so we have another request right here. All right, so if you're in the category that guessed that this was going to work at the first try and our user data will be synced to our Sanity CMS, you are correct. And you can attest to that because we also have a 200 status code right here. And if you are in the other category that guessed that this was not going to work, and your reason is because we also need to create a different endpoint for production, you're also correct. And to the best of my knowledge, why this is working is because Astra is a full-fledged framework and everything is baked into it. So from the front end down to the API endpoints to connect to whatever database, it's baked into it directly. So if you take note, you see I have a hookdeck API where I have a CLI hookdeck API for my dev, and there's one for production. This connection is using React as the front-end library, and I'm using Netlify serverless functions to write my functions. So in this case, trying this directly won't work. I tried it once, it did work. Maybe I didn't do it the right way, because after this video, I'm going to redo it again. And if that works, I will definitely come back and update you guys. But what I've tried so far, so I had to create a separate endpoint for the CLI and for the production. I don't want to open this so that you don't get access to the website. So that's just the difference. And on your own, I would suggest you try it out. Alright guys, so that's the end of the video. Hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed this video, I will highly suggest you watch this video if you have some minutes to spare. See you next time.